Hey everybody, this is Dust for Dustin on Gaming with a little bit of a special treat for you guys, for those of you that are a fan of Eternal formats. So, a while back, about a month or so ago, I mentioned that we'd be starting to get in some Legacy content. So, here's the caveats with Legacy content. Just a friendly reminder, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you like what you're seeing on this particular video or want to see more Legacy content, give us a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments. Alright, so Legacy content's going to come with a caveat. So, I can play in practice room games to a certain degree. Legacy's a little bit hard to get to fire. Or I can play in the competitive league. Now, the competitive league is $12. Normally with the modern content, I'm playing mostly friendly leagues or challenges, or if I'm playing in a bigger event, it's usually my choice. It's not a user submitted deck list. It's not whatever. So here's what's going to happen. People want to see Legacy leagues. They want me to play a specific deck. They want me to test a deck of theirs. It's going to cost. I'm going to try to set up PayPal or something along those lines. If you want to see your particular brew run through a league, it's going to cost you $12. That's the cost of the entry fee. I really hate to pass down the cost to you guys, but people have modern brews. I have no problems running some practice games with them or playing in a friendly league if I really enjoy it and I think the deck's done well. Legacy, this is mostly for my own tournament prep and for your guys' enjoyment. If there's a specific deck you guys want me to play, it's going to cost you the entry fee, which is $12, which is a lot better than most content creators. Most content creators are hitting you for 20, 30, 40 bucks, for non-subscribers and stuff on Twitch and stuff. So, that said, you guys want me to play a specific deck, I'm going to try to set up some way for PayPal for you guys to contribute if you're sending me a list via email or whatever. But beyond that, I will play some Legacy decks. Like, I'll take some requests for, specific archetypes if I like them. Like the upper end stuff like, the Grixis Control, Miracles, Delver, Death Shadow, Storm. Those kind of decks I'm going to get to eventually. But in my own time, on my own money. But if it's something like somebody wants me to play their special Nick Fit list, or someone wants me to play their Enchantress list, sorry, it's going to cost you the $12 for the entry fee, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Anywho, that caveat out of the way, let's get into the deck I ended up playing. I did this off camera. This is Red Black Reanimator, or actually it's kind of become Jun Reanimator almost with the sideboard cards. Goal is to get a quick Faithless Looting or a quick Entomb into Chancellor of the Annex, Gristlebrand, or Iona or Tidespout Tyrant. Gristlebrand obviously being the primary hit, but Chancellor of the Annex can be pretty good against the Storm decks. Iona can shut down a lot of other decks. Tidespout Tyrant obviously very powerful in the Mirror Match and some other stuff. The Elish Norn and Ashen Rider in the sideboard. Archetype of Endurance helps protect your stuff from the various Caracas effects and other stuff. Lake of the Dead and Grave Titans come in situations where you expect your opponent to have a lot of graveyard hate. This is kind of where, like, the thing that Stronghold Gambit used to play. This is kind of your hard cast between your Dark Rituals, your Lotus Petals, and your lands, trying to hard cast these Grave Titans with Lake of the Dead and all your swamps. That's why every mana producing land in the deck is a swamp. So I'm going to be straight up, I did not play this particularly great. I'm still getting back into the swing of Legacy. I've been doing a ton of Modern and a ton of Standard, so I really haven't looked closely at the Modern format or the Legacy format since the bang of Dividing Top. However, all things considered, I hope to be going to Grand or Mythic Qualifier, whatever, Grand Mythic Championship weekend, Grand Prix Niagara, whatever it is. Which is a Legacy format, which my paper deck will be Miracles, but I do want to get to know the rest of the format. I guess there's an outside chance I could get Grixis together, but I don't really feel like dumping a bunch of money into duels, so Miracles is most likely going to be the deck I'm playing, or some type of Stoneblade list variant thereof. But anyways, so Reanimator, you're trying to play quick Entombs, Faithless Lootings, get some stuff in the graveyard, bring things back with Exhume, Animate Dead, or Reanimate. They all have their various positivities. Reanimate costs you life for the casting cost of the creature, so this gets worse as the game goes along. Exhume, if your opponent happens to get a creature in the graveyard, they get it back. Animate Dead is an enchantment, so if they can blow up the enchantment, or they can also, it also gives their creature -1/-0. Reanimate and Animate Dead give you some play against your opponent's own creatures, like you can Thoughtseize, Crowball Therapy, unmask one of your opponent's creatures away, and then reanimate it. So you don't always have to have one of your own creatures to reanimate, but they are definitely preferential over generally what most of your opponent's going to be running. 14 lands, Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual to kind of accelerate your mana. Best play is like turn 1, Swamp, Dark Ritual, Entomb, Exhume, say Gristlebrand, or Chancellor of the Annex. And then also Chancellor of the Annex, in addition to all the discard spells, gives you some outs to protect your stuff against your opponent's things, especially if you're on the play. This deck is a deck that is very dependent on its opening hand and can have some very, very broken turn 1 plays. Elesh Norn comes in against creature decks, things like Elves, things like Death and Taxes, things like Maverick. A couple copies of Thoughtseize when you need more disruption, and it's a little less blind than Cabal Therapy. Grave Titans come in situations where you're trying to hardcast with Lake of the Dead and your rustier stuff. Reverend of Silence, I'm not 100% sure about this one. I'm guessing this is more for when you're expecting ley lines or enchantress decks. Archetype Endurance protects against things like Karakas. It's also a big beater on its own that has hexproof. Ashen Rider is pretty good when you're trying to nuke particular permanents. Assassin's Trophy helps you to disrupt permanent-based hate cards. Things like various hate bears like Containment Priest, Rest in Peace, Leyline. So you can generally bring in Assassin's Trophy in the dark as a way to kind of have an out against random hate cards. Everybody has their own smattering of graveyard hate. You see Extirpate, you see Surgical Extraction, you see Leyline the Void, you see Scavenging Ooze. Since the banning of Deathrite Shaman, you see a lot of those. A lot of these decks have Surgical Extractions in them, so that is a card to play around. I did not play them around that masterfully this league, so just a heads up. But this league is more of a get my feet wet into Legacy, and I wanted to play something powerful and proactive. Maybe I should have stuck to a fair deck since that's my usual forte in Modern these days, but let's get into the matches. So, match number 1. By the way, if you see a play line that I could have done, there are some I saw in retrospect, So this is my opener. We're on the draw here. Don't have a creature, but I have a Faithless Looting and a couple reanimation spells. Usually good enough. Playing against mono red here. Crack, grab Badlands, play out the Petal to play around things. Then I unmask here to take away one of their hate cards. Trinisphere is the take here, although these Rabble Masters are certainly a problem. There was some consideration to actually taking one of our opponent's Rabble Masters, but Trinisphere is just too problematic of a card. So I found Gristledad here, and I didn't discard him. That is a huge mistake on my part. With Gristledad, we would have at least had a chance to... a turn earlier would have at least had a chance to kind of stem the tide of these Goblin Rabble Masters. But as it is, we had to trade Gristlebrand for one of these guys, and then we pretty much just died. So, to whatever their follow-up was. Fiery Claw Influence would just kill us there. So, right on to game number 2. Sideboarding. Looks like I brought in a couple copies of Assassin's Trophy, boarded out one Cabal Therapy and one Gristlebrand. And then I also brought in Elesh Norn, which if I would have had that to Entomb for last game, I probably would have won pretty easily. We're on the play this game. Stand's pretty reasonable. We have an Entomb, we have an Exhume, we have a Faithless Looting, so... And unfortunately we see a Leyline in the Void on turn 1, which means... What did I need with Cabal Therapy? I need Chalice of the Void, because that would have definitely KO'd us here. Ended up having just a bunch of nonsense in their hand, pretty much. That Leyline was the reason they kept the hand. And the reality is, it didn't really matter what we drew here. We had to, like, specifically draw, yeah, that Trinisphere pretty well locked us out. Like, we've got just a bunch of junk in our stuff over there. Yeah, and then probably a turn early to concede to Mana Monkey. Like, I could have hit, like, Dark Ritual into Gristlebrand, but the Transference play just kind of locked us out. So we really had a chance game one if I would have sequenced the Gristlebrand correctly. We would have been able to kill one of the Rabble Masters a turn earlier and maybe not have had to trade Gristlebrand, and then maybe Gristlebrand could have taken over the game from there because their goblins have to attack in. So game one I lost because of my own missequencing and not pitching Gristlebrand with my Faithless Looting. But the deck obviously has game, so match number two. Match number two. This hand has the ability to go Cabal Therapy on 1, Reanimate Dead on 2. So definitely a hand I'm interested in keeping with Chancellor of Annex backup. Opponent ends up Thought Seizing or Reanimate Dead. We end up drawing another Reanimate Dead. We put Gristle Pig into the graveyard. We get bailed out by Lotus Petal here, which will enable us to animate Dead Gristlebrand, and our opponent's just kind of cold to that card. So, alright, game number two. So it looked like we were up against some type of Death Shadow variant. It ends up being something similar to modern Jund Death Shadow or Traverse Death Shadow. So I boarded out a Cabal Therapy and an Exhume for a couple copies of Assassin's Trophy. And what other card? Brought in the Grave Titans, I think. So I wasn't 100% sure what our opponent was on. I suspected it was some style of Death Shadow deck from what we saw, but like the Bobble, that confirmed, and then we get Thought Seized again. They took our Reanimate. Go ahead and pitch Gristle Pig. Now we're just waiting on a reanimation spell here. Pitch an Iona. What plays there? We get a Gristle Pig. Opponent Diabolic Edicts it. We start getting hit here. So here I entomb for Tidespout Tyrant to start getting rid of the stuff on their board and leveraging Cabal Therapy here to get rid of the stuff we bounce. We bounce Tarmogoyf. Name Tarmogoyf. Get 2 Tarmadoofies. Opponent has a Death Shadow. They drew another Tarmogoyf here. Flashback Faithless Looting. Bounce their Tarmogoyf. Start killing our opponent. They play a Tarmogoyf. They play a Death Shadow. And here, Tidespout Tyrant was just enough to close out the game. So one other play I had available to me was reanimating Death Shadow, which I probably should have done in case they found like an Assassin's Trophy or a Dismember or something that they might have brought in to kill this Tidespout Tyrant, but as it is, we got there. So it ended up being our only match win, which kind of sucks, but some of that was certainly due to misplays and unfamiliarity with my part, just letting things go that shouldn't go if I'd played everything 100% correctly. Alright, this hand, Entomb, Reanimate, pretty good overall. Couple Chancellors to protect us. Entomb, get Gristle Pig, Reanimate Gristle Pig. I think our opponent deliberately showed us this so we'd have no idea about what was going on. I think they did this to make us think they were on Storm. So I ended up boarding thinking they were on Storm, and they most definitely were not on Storm. Like sideboard, I brought in Thought Seizes, put out a Cabal Therapy, boarded out Tidespout Tyrant, and Didn't bring in Assassin's Trophies or anything. We'll see what our opponent was actually on here in a minute. They thought sees us. Take our Lotus Petal. I named Infernal Tutor. Guess what? They're not on Storm. They're on Buried Alive Phoenix. Pitch a Chancellor, pitch a Gristlebrand. They have an extra pate in hand here, so we're not going to be able to like completely blank what they had going on. They do that to take away some of our options. We have 2 Chancellors in the graveyard. They take away an Exhume. Keep a Dark Ritual here. It just starts the Young Pyromancer beats. We got Chancellor of the Annex going here. Unfortunately, it's not enough in this matchup. We really needed like Elesh Norn or something here to clean up all this crap, but we didn't know they were on stuff. And then our opponent did the thing. We blocked. And then we really can't reanimate any of our things without dying here. Like if we reanimate Iona, they have Echoing Truth and Buried Alive, so we were just kind of dead here, unfortunately. Like if I could have attacked and then reanimated one of these creatures, you know, then we had them dead in 2 swings, but that was just the game. Because we reanimate, we go to 4, or reanimate this, we go to 5. Can't really stop anything they cast. They have an Echoing Truth in hand, so we need to reanimate Iona, and then they have exactly lethal on board. So, now knowing what the matchup is, being Grixis Phoenix, changed up sideboarding a little bit. Brought in the Elesh Norn, still go down to Cabal Therapy. It's possible I should have brought in Grave Titans here. Just the Grave Titan like the dead plan. That's the one thing I'm not like entirely sure of. What's the correct time to bring that in? What's the correct time not to? This hand's a pretty easy mulligan. If we had an Enabler here, this hand would be great, but we don't, so we have to mulligan. This hand has an Enabler. We have an Animate Dead on top. So Tormod's Crypt got us good here. So I screwed up here. I should have played Exhume instead of Animate Dead, and we'll get back to that later, but had to force the opponent to use the opponent just bolting us. They preordain us. Flusterstorm's Entomb. Plays Tombstalker. We see a hand of all this crap. If we had kept Animate Dead instead of Exhume, I could have potentially taken the Tombstalker and then reanimated it with Animate Dead, and then we would have had a fighting chance against that second Tormod's Crypt. But as it is, we're just pretty well locked out of the game. They named Exhume, so I went ahead and scooped. So on to match number 4, which ends up, I believe, being the mirror match. And I made one mistake in this game. I can't remember if it was game 1 or game 2. But, I mean, this hand's, we're on the draw. This hand's pretty decent. We've got an Unmask, a couple of things here. My recognition of Legacy decks is pretty slow compared to Modern. So I went ahead and Faithless Looting, ditched our 2 creatures, and then just on the safe side, I decided to unmask our opponent here. And good thing we did, because they had Animate Dead, and we were going to get hammered here. But as is, they had Entomb and Exhume, and they were able to go get their creature of their choice. Opponent went and got Tidespout Tyrant, which means they could just play their stuff. This is the mistake I made. I should have drawn 7 here, and that was pretty much the game, because then I don't have enough resources to leverage against what they got going on. So, and then, yeah, I just scooped at that point. And game number 4, or match number 4, game number 2, sideboarding. Once again, 100% correct. Boarded out a Cabal Therapy and a Gristlebrand for 2 copies of Thoughtseize. It feels like this is very dependent on disrupting your opponent's opening hand. First hand's an easy mulligan. This hand is pretty easy keep. Opponent has a Chancellor of the Annex as their first card. Play the Petal, let get countered. Opponent goes for Cabal Therapy. We put an Iona in the yard, which in hindsight may have been incorrect given the fact they happen to name Exhume, which is annoying. Now we're stuck with a hand of... because they could have easily had Reanimate there and gotten back our Iona. Now their hand is a couple Chancellors and an Unmask. They have a white splash in their deck for whatever reason. They unmask away our thing. Get Ashen Rider. And then they reanimate our Iona. And that's yeah. Turn later we would have been able to reanimate Iona and end the game on the spot. So, Legacy. Last round was probably our nicest opponent. The only one that was kind of chatty the whole time. He ended up being on Maverick. Which, how does Reanimator lose to Maverick? Well, mulligan here, keep a Gristle Pig on top. We pretty much have the nuts here, right? And then they go Wasteland, Thalia. We can't cast anything. Then they play Scavenging Ooze, and, well, this plus 3 green mana plus this equals... game over. Match number 2. Starting to get a better feel for the deck. This time I did bring in the Lake of the Dead Grave Titan package. It's possible I should have brought in the Assassin's Trophies, and then I also brought in Elishnorn. I boarded out Iona. You can technically name green, but that doesn't stop like all of their deck. And then boarded out like 1 Chancellor of the Annex. So... this hand is reasonable. If we ever draw a thing to reanimate, we have Cabal Therapy. I end up shooting off Cabal Therapy, targeting our opponent, naming Knight of the Reliquary. Ding ding, hit double Knight. One downside is we didn't have any fetch lands with our draw, so like we get back double Knight here, but it's like we get a bunch of 2/2s. And then our opponent has Mother Runes and the Mother of Runes. Faithless Looting. We get to entomb some stuff. But keeping in mind our opponent has a Surgical Extraction and the Swords to Plowshares here, so... or had the Swords to Plowshare. Now they get to protect their stuff with that. Cabal Therapy away the Surgical Extraction, that way our entomb could actually hope to get somewhere. Opponent starts hitting in here. We entomb here on instep. Grab Elishnorn to wipe away their board. Dark Writ. Cast Animate Dead. And guess what? They drew a Surgical Extraction. So it's possible we could have rebuilt here. With the current clock we were on, they were on 3, so we've gone down to 8 next turn. It's possible if we would have had another Faithless Looting or a Entomb, we could have gotten there in time, but would have been problematic. So, anywho, that was our quick replay through a first Legacy League. We're not going to do Legacy Leagues all the time. First off, they're expensive, especially if you don't do well on them. Second off, as school dawns on us here, it's going to be a little bit harder to play Magic more consistently. But we're definitely going to be playing some Legacy content here and there. If there are specific decks you guys are interested in, let me know. You know, if there's a big swell for a particular deck or something that's especially one of the top tier decks, I'll be interested in playing it. However, if there's a specific list, a specific deck that you absolutely want to see played, I'm going to try to set up PayPal some way here on YouTube or have a link to PayPal, and so you guys can pay $12 to have a specific list played. Like I said, that's the cost of entry. I'm not trying to gouge anybody. I'm just saying if you want to see a specific list played, I know Space Marine said that he wanted to see like a Miracles list played and stuff, which that's fine, but unfortunately, it's going to cost cash. So, when it's modern, I don't care because I can do practice leagues. I can do friendly league. I can do practice rooms, friendly leagues fairly easily. Legacy, I might be able to do some practice rooms, but I don't know what the quality of those are going to be. So, that's just a heads up. And anyways, if you're new to the channel, once again, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see more Legacy content, give us some thumbs up and give me some feedback on what kind of decks and stuff you guys want to see. This has been Dusk for Dusk to Dawn Gaming. I hope everyone's having a great day.